This is teacher Jamie Gomez, Andreas, Reggie, Michael, or God King. Let's go to West Hollywood, California. In the early 1980s, a guy in a Speedo named Andreas created a group by gathering people to come meditate with him in the water. The people were all young, fit, healthy, and beautiful. This was Andreas' target group. They eventually started living together and devoting more and more time to each other and the group. It was innocent. Andreas encouraged them to stop drinking alcohol, get rid of TV, and spend more time in service. There were only a few red flags to this environment. Number 1, cutting off contact with parents, and number 2, no sex or relationships. They spent their days working and their nights meditating, practicing ballet, dancing, listening, singing. Everyone joined to transform themselves. One theory for why they experienced such high feelings at the camp could be because they were deprived of normal activities that release high doses of serotonin and dopamine, such as parental contact, alcohol, relationships, sex, and more. The people who joined the cult were looking for spirituality. They created their own utopia. Their leader was Andreas. Andreas was so lovable because he was young, vivacious, and lively. He sang and danced and did art. Andreas turns out to be this huge fan of ballet. He loves ballet, and eventually, 2 of his students give up their room to make a ballet studio for him. Andreas appointed people to be his personal masseuse. The people were so blinded by him that they would do anything. The group kept spending more and more time together. Eventually, they were together almost 24/7. Andreas would do hypnotherapy. They joked, if this is a cult, then it's a good cult. Andreas made up this thing called a knowing session, where God would enlighten them. This was hypnotherapy session where he said only a few were worthy. This encouraged people to pull closer. The hypnotherapy left them feeling like they were on acid or LSD. They saw flashing lights and colors. So having been deprived of dopamine and experiencing that feeling of LSD or acid was an immediate hook, addictive hook. Teacher was very manipulative. He would say things like, quote, I had a dream you were going to die, unless you follow my instruction, end quote. People were not allowed to have sex because apparently the only, quote, orgasm should be through God, end quote. After about 4 years, Andreas started recruiting people to do acts of service for him. These acts seemed innocent, like, can you get me this and that? But this eventually became demanding. Andreas started even changing people's names. One man was in love with a woman in a cult, but relationships were forbidden. He outed the cult, and then the teacher moved with 4 others into Texas. Even those closest to him still had no idea who he was. Buddhafield was brought back to Texas after the craziness blew over. They built Andreas his own aviary and raised tons of birds and peacocks. The aviary became rat-infested, and Andreas demanded that the people kill the rats. People said they began to feel like his warriors. It started to become work. In 1997, someone offered to build a huge theater for Andreas' ballet. It started to become less of a service and more of a chore. He would demand people to redo certain walls and then flip out because it was taking years. This is when it was very clear that he was verbally abusive to all. They performed these elaborate ballets that people would practice for like 4 hours of a day. They started to serve him more than ever by things like even carrying his chair around. Members started to say it wasn't fun anymore. Permission was needed for everything. One time, somebody bought a dog and had to get rid of it because Andreas didn't like dogs. Andreas was fat-phobic and demanded everyone to fit a certain beauty standard. He himself had done many Botoxes, so he started to look crazy and unhumane. There were also found to be pounds of makeup in his room. He was hypocritical and made people do and act a certain way. By this point, all the red flags are waving. This was a cult. The people felt like they were going crazy because they didn't like him, and they didn't want that. They began to hate him, but they also left feeling enlightened, and felt like they needed more therapy sessions. Everyone was so brainwashed. They had been together for years and years, and they still didn't know each other's stories. It also became clear unto the people that Andreas was actually a porn star. Even a woman came out and told a story that she pretended to have cancer so he could fake heal her under his requests. All of a sudden, everybody decided to leave. He made a video not apologizing, and it sounded like he was hypnotizing people. 17 years after the first knowing session, in an attempt to gather everyone back, he does another knowing session. The knowing session was really crappy, and the teacher was absolutely losing it. The people said they didn't feel connected at all. The teacher was threatened after most people decided to turn against him. He moved to Hawaii in 2007 and took some of his most loyal people with him. Members described it as a huge death because they had no money, no family, no jobs, and no will to live. Since 2007, more than a dozen members have come forth with physical and sexual abuse stories. Let's do a quick wrap-up. The Buddhafield cult is a new religious movement cult. The leader is Jamie Gomez, who goes by many different names, and they are now located in Hawaii since 2007, where members are gathered at yoga studios and on the beach. This cult is sickening. Jamie Gomez led hundreds, if not thousands, to dedicate years of their life to receive nothing but physical and sexual abuse. Thank you.